What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. This is Force, and here today we're going to have a discussion about Skyforge. Specifically, I'd like to talk about first impressions. So I just finally got to the first substantial zone in this game, and what I mean by that is that prior to this point, the average mission zone area took about 15 minutes. So there's like 6 of them, and for the first 8 hours, I kid you not, for the first 8 hours, I spent my time going through these 6 different mission zones over and over again at 15 minutes a pop. On average, between 10 and 20 minutes, I'd say, but it averages out to about 15. And that's 8 hours of repeatedly doing these same areas over and over again, albeit they do get a little more difficult. And there's like different objectives, like try not to die or try to hit 5 enemies at once with a single move a couple of times, these little bonuses to try to hit your S rank. But the fact of the matter is, these first 8 hours were in these incredibly small areas. Some are larger than others, but it's a linear path. First of all, they were all linear paths. You go from the start and you wind your way through to the end. It's like go from point A to B, completing objectives on the way there. 15 minutes, very, very small areas. Now this Landber Forest zone that I came into this afternoon, it took me 2 hours to complete. It was the first substantial area that had a significant amount of NPCs, and one of the biggest things too, it's had a significant amount of other players. It's the first zone where I saw like more than 3 people. There's a ton of people. Everywhere I went in this zone, there were people doing the quests that I was working on. So it made the world feel more alive, and it made it feel a lot more like an MMO. Honestly, I would classify those first 8 hours, I would consider this like an action game, going through these small little instances, repeating them, trying to hit S ranking. Like, it really felt like an action game, and it doesn't hurt that it sort of plays like an action game as well. Overall, I've had an okay experience, but I really feel like the first impression of this game makes it feel more like an action game than it does an MMO, which, it's okay if that's what they're shooting for, but I have to say, from my perspective and in my opinion, if they had peppered zones like Landber Forest in amongst those first 8 hours, I think I would have had a much, much better first impression, and I think I would have sort of enjoyed this game a lot more than I can say that I have so far. It was like a traditional MMO zone. Landber Forest is like a World of Warcraft or a Guild Wars 2 zone. It is large, tons of quests to do, tons of enemies to slay, bosses to take out, people to rescue, objects to collect. It's a real thing instead of just okay, I teleported in, I'm gonna book it from point A to point B, killing things along the way, and then I'm done. I'll go back to the main hub area, I'll talk to a couple of NPCs to progress my main story quest, and then I go back to the map, I pick one of those 6 missions depending on where the story is telling me to go back to again, and then I just do it over and over again. And I'm just sort of bummed. I feel as if the way it's structured right now, a lot of people are going to get turned off and probably shy away from the game within those first couple of hours. The experience just could be infinitely better, in my opinion, if something like Landber Forest, if it's not just Landber Forest itself. I mean, maybe they can rework the story and just throw Landber Forest in the first, 2 to 3 hours, instead of having to wait 8 hours of progression, doing the same 6 missions over and over again. And I know I'm being repetitive here in this video, but it is no more repetitive than the game itself becomes in that initial experience. And yes, if you talk to anyone who's played a significant amount of MMOs, they will all tell you it takes a while to get into the meat of these games. You really have to progress your characters, level up, but as they say, you have to wait to the end game before you can really judge it. That doesn't take away from the fact that first impressions are important, that they do matter, and I think that the first impression of this game could be infinitely better than it is in the current way that it's structured. Honestly, I'll break it down exactly for you how it works. The first 8 hours are this. I'm in the main hub area. I talk to an NPC. tells me a bunch of stuff about the story. I go to the global map, I select a mission, I go in, takes between 10 and 20 minutes, on average of 15. I leave back in that hub area, which there's only one hub area, and then like 2 little side areas, a park and a research center, all very small. I talk to another NPC, walk back to the world map, select another mission, go through 15 minutes, come back, talk to an NPC, walk back to the map, and 8 hours doing the same 6 missions in 15-minute loops and talking to NPCs. Honestly, after about 4 hours, I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is this game? Is it just these 6 missions? And then finally, to come across Lambert Forest, it was a breath of fresh air. I'm like, this is amazing. I can see a bunch of other people. I'm walking around. I'm picking up quests as I go, similar to like how Guild Wars 2 works. It was great, and it felt so much better. And you know, again, as always, this stuff is from my perspective. It's just my personal opinion. It's okay to have a game that's like an action game with these little chunks, but to have it be so repetitive and to hold back this phenomenally looking zone and this more interesting zone and this zone that really feels alive and makes the world feel like it's living and breathing and just much more inhabitable than it felt prior to this point. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I wanted to give you guys some of my thoughts on how the game is structured at the moment and how I think they can improve it. And again, like I said, either toss Lambert Forest within the first 2 to 3 hours so that people can see that this game actually does have some substance to its zones, and it's not just this tiny corridor that you go from point A to B and then hit repeat. They actually have some interesting looking areas. Then I think you're going to have a lot more people that might stick around to give this game more of a shot. Overall, the gameplay feels okay. Those first impressions really did let me down. I came across Lambert Forest, and I'm going to keep trucking through. I want to see if there's more interesting zones like this one as I continue to make my way through the game. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching this video discussing Skyforge and how first impressions matter. Hope you all have a fantastic afternoon, and I'll see you later.